today's link is between 6 bases and phassa, contact. In the previous link, Sālāyadana means 6 internal bases: eye base, ear base, nose base, tongue base, and mind base. But here there are two opinions of teachers. Some teachers said that since the dependent origination has to do with living beings, only 6 internal bases are to be taken as 6 bases. But there were other teachers who said the result or the conditioned dhammas belong to living beings, but the conditions can be external or outside. So in their opinion, we have to take all 12 bases as 6 bases here. The 6 external bases are those that correspond to the 6 internal bases, that is, visible object, sound, smell, taste, touch, and dhammas. So these are 6 external bases. So depending upon these 6 internal and 6 external bases, contact arises. Now, we must understand what contact is. And the word for contact in Pali is phassa. So phassa means touching. And phassa is a one distinct mental factor or cetasika. And it is one of the 7 cetasikas that arise with all types of consciousness. Its characteristic is touching. Here, touching does not mean physical touch. So it is mental touch, because phassa or contact is immaterial. So actually it cannot touch. It has no touch. But it arises as though it touches. So that is why it is called touching. For example, when you see something, and if that something is a strong object, then you are affected by it. And that you are being affected by it is actually the result of this contact or phassa. In the books, the instances are given of the phassa arising in the mode of touching. For instance, when you see someone eating sour fruit or a mango or something, your mouth waters. So that is the effect of phassa. Someone or some animal hurt or tortured, and if you are a compassionate person, then you will be moved by it, or sometimes you may even shake. So that is also the effect of phassa. And another instance is the trembling of the knees in a timid man standing on the ground when he sees a man precariously balanced on a high tree branch. So when a person sees a man balanced on a high tree on a branch, then he shakes. So that is also the effect of phassa. You may have been to a circus. So when you see someone walking on the tightrope, or some acrobats performing on the, what do you call that, trapeze, you have some feeling in your heart, right? So that is the effect of phassa. The next instant is the loss of power of the legs in one who sees something terrifying, such as a goblin. Now sometimes when people see a ghost or something, then he lost his power to move. He could not move. So that is also, he was paralyzed, and that was caused by phassa. When I lived in Sekang near Mandalay, it was a religious sanctuary for monks and nuns only. It's like a hill and something like a forest, and there are leopards. So at night they would come down to drink water from the river. And when the dogs got the scent of that leopard, they could not move. They just became easy prey of the leopard. So they cannot run away. So that's phassa. You can add many more instances of phassa from your experience. So Mahasi Sayadaw explained the difference between the consciousness, which is awareness, and phassa, which is a contact. You see something, for example, say there is the eye, and then visible object comes into the avenue of the eye, and then there is the awareness of that object. Just that mere awareness of that object is consciousness. And after that awareness, you experience the object vividly, and that experiencing the object vividly is, Sayadaw said, phassa. So whenever you come across any object, there is this kind of vivid experience of it, not just the awareness. So just the mere awareness is consciousness, citta, and the vivid experience of that object is phassa. Phassa, as it were, engage the consciousness on the object. So when there is the awareness, as consciousness, as awareness of the object, phassa comes up and bring them closer together, like something like that. And so we have a vivid experience of that object, and that is the function of phassa. During meditation, you can see phassa if you pay close attention and if your concentration is stronger. When you when you are mindful of something, then you know it clearly, you see it clearly. So that clearly seeing or vivid experience of that object is what is called phassa. There is pain in the body, and you are aware of that pain, and that pain becomes very vivid, right? So that is phassa. Sometimes yogis are startled by a very soft noise, a noise of a house lizard, or a very faint noise, but they become afraid or they become startled. And that is also the effect of phassa on them. Their faculties, so their mind has become so keen that they are able to detect these small objects, subtle objects. And even that subtle object, noise appears to them as a big noise, and so they are startled. So many yogis have experienced that kind of phassa. When phassa is strong, it can give rise to strong feeling and also to strong kusala and akusala. You see something which you like very much, and then you see it vividly and you are attached to it, and through that attachment to it you may do something wrong, you may rob or you may even kill, and so a lot of akusala can arise out of this phassa. On the good side, say you look at the Buddha statue and you see it vividly and you have thoughts of kusala. Or you may see someone who would accept your offerings and you offer to him, something like that. So phassa can lead to kusala also. Whenever you see an object, your mind, as it were, hits the object or something like that. So, and you experience it vividly, and that is phassa. That is the characteristic of phassa. Now, function. Phassa has the function of the act of impingement. That means it something like strike the object. Although it is not stuck to the object on any one side of it, it impinges on the consciousness and object, as visible object impinges on the eye and sound on the ear. Now, it is not stuck to the object on one side or on that side because it is immaterial. Yeah. But it impinges on consciousness and object. That means it engages consciousness and object together like that, so that they meet. And that meeting, or something that comes out of that meeting, is what we call phassa. Now let us see what conditions are needed for phassa to arise. Now you see something, that means you have the eye, and there is something to be seen, and that is awareness of that object. So there are three things: the sense, the object, and the awareness. So when these three come together, phassa also arises, coordinating these three together. So that is phassa. So phassa is not just meeting of the three, but something that comes out of the meeting of the three. Maybe it is like, say, you put the three balls together and the noise is produced. So the noise is produced because the three balls meet, something like that. So phassa is not just coming together, but a distinct mental factor that arises as a result of these three coming together. Sometimes the word rasa, which is translated as function, is made to mean some kind of attainment or result. So if we take that, take the word rasa in that sense, then the function of phassa is actually the attainment of, or the result of, the coming together of the three. Then manifestation. it manifests. It is a manifestation of concurrence, that is coming together of the three. For example, eye base, visible object, and eye consciousness. So actually, what it means is, it appears to the minds of yogi as something that comes out of the concurrence of the three, and the sense, the object, and consciousness.
Và
And its proximate cause is said to be object that has come into focus. That means when an object comes into focus to the eye and so on, phassa always arises. Nothing can prevent it from arising. So the object that comes into focus is said to be its proximate cause. So this phassa should be regarded as a heightless cow, because it is the habitat of feeling, because it is the dwelling place of feelings. So it is to be regarded as a cow which has no hide, no skin. So if you take the skin off the cow, then it is the object of many insects biting it. And then the text from the book called Kindred Sayings. So there it said, a cow with a sore hide. And the words in the bracket were put by me, without hide. So the translator took it to be a sore hide, not without hide altogether. But the Pali word means just without hide. So a cow without a hide should stand leaning against a wall and so on. So whichever it leans against, the creatures in that place would bite her. So there is no chance of getting free from being bitten by those insects. Wherever it leans, even in the water or up in the air, always there will be insects biting it. So in the same way, when there is phassa, there will always be feeling of vedana. We cannot stop or we cannot avoid feeling when there is contact or phassa. So phassa is a place, a dwelling place for vedanas, feelings. So it is to be regarded like a cow without a hide.
thì
Now, phassa is said to be of 6 kinds. That means phassa that arises with seeing consciousness, phassa that arises with hearing consciousness, with smelling consciousness, with tasting consciousness, with body consciousness, and also with other mind consciousness. So phassa is said to be 6 kinds. Now let us see how phassa is conditioned by bases or ayatanas. So please look at the second chart.
và bây giờ chúng ta sẽ
Put them all in Pali because it takes less space to write in Pali than in English. Difficulty following this. Now, when you see something, what happens? First, there is a kind of consciousness called bhavanga. It is translated as unconscious or something like that. So that bhavanga consciousness arises all through our life. It stops only when we see something, we hear something, and at that time hearing consciousness and others arise. And then after that, bhavanga arises again, and so on and so on. So bhavanga, this that is called inactive mind, is going on all through our lives. Now, when a visible object comes into the avenue of the eye, or we call it when the object strikes the eye, it strikes the bhavanga also. So bhavanga becomes shaky, and then after 2 moments of shaking, it stops. And after that, one thought moment arises, and that thought moment is turning towards the object, and also it is like thinking what it is, something like that. So after that moment, there is what is called chakku vijnana here, seeing consciousness. Chakku means eye and vijnana means consciousness. So we can call it eye consciousness or seeing consciousness. Seeing it, the mind accepts it. So there is the next one, sampatichana, this is accepting or receiving. English translations are given at the foot of the page. And then after that there is santirana, investigating. After receiving the object, it investigates it. And then the next is vattabana, that is determining whether it is good or bad, or whether it is real object or not. And then next is what? Javana, that is the full experience of the object. And then after that, the dharmana, let's just call it aftertaste. It follows the javana. Now, vattabana and javana are put in the square brackets because we don't need them here. What happens when we see something?
Khi
So along with eye consciousness, there arise phassa, contact, vedana, feeling, and plus other mental factors. So phassa, vedana, and other mental factors arise with eye consciousness. And that eye consciousness depends on the chakku pasada, eye sensitivity. Chakku pasada means eye sensitivity. So eye consciousness or seeing consciousness and phassa, vedana, and other cetasikas are rising together with it, and they depend on the eye sensitivity to arise. See how phassa is conditioned by the basis. Now the object here, I say rupa, that means visible object. So visible object base, and seeing consciousness is mind base, called mind base, and eye sensitivity is called eye base. So there are rupa base, mind base, eye base. Phassa is conditioned by all these three. So if the object is saddha, that means sound, then there arises ear consciousness, right? Sota vijnana. And along with it, phassa, vedana, and others. And they depend on sota pasada, ear sensitivity. Here also, phassa is conditioned by saddha, and it is conditioned by ear consciousness, or hearing consciousness, and also it is conditioned by ear base. So their relationship, mode of relationship is different, but it is conditioned by these three bases. If the object is gandha, smell, then there is smelling consciousness, and then phassa, vedana, and others, cetasikas, and then ghana pasada, nose sensitivity. So in this case, phassa is conditioned by smell, and then smelling consciousness and nose sensitivity. When the object is the taste, then phassa is conditioned by the taste, tasting consciousness and tongue sensitivity. And if it is a touch, then phassa is conditioned by tangible object and body consciousness and body sensitivity. So let us apply to real experience. You see something because you have the eye, because there is something to be seen, and there is the awareness of that object. So when these three come together, there is contact or phassa. So phassa is conditioned by these three. So you don't have to look at the chart. And when you hear something, you hear a noise. You hear the noise because you have the ear, and then there is sound, and there is consciousness, hearing consciousness. So when these three come together, phassa also arises. That is vividly experiencing the sound. When a yogi sees something and he is mindful of seeing, or he is making notes as seeing. When his concentration becomes stronger, he will see that because there is the eye, there is seeing, because there is something to be seen, there is seeing, and the awareness of the object is what is called seeing, and then vividly experiencing the object is what is called phassa. So he can understand this by paying attention to seeing, and he will also know that consciousness arises simply because there is the eye and there is something to be seen, and so this consciousness is not created by any Brahma or any God, but it arises because there are its conditions at that moment. So a yogi sees that things happen depending upon some other thing, and not anything is causeless, or not anything is created by some Brahma or other deity. So this a yogi comes to see when he pays attention to say what's at the present moment. With sound it is clearer, because sound arises and disappears very vividly. So when a yogi pays attention to what he hears, or making notes as hearing, he knows that there is hearing because there is the ear and there is the sound, and only when the sound reaches the ear is there hearing. And that hearing is the awareness of the sound. And then coming together of these three, the ear, the sound, and the awareness, causes the vivid experience of the sound, which is phassa. And he also knows that hearing is not created by anything, anybody, but just it arises as a result of the conditions coming together. When you smell something, you know that there is the smell and there is the nose. And so when these two come together, there is the awareness of the smell. And because of these three coming together, there is the vivid experience of smell. Now sometimes if the smell is very offensive, so you feel a great deal about it. Or if it is a perfume smell, so you like it, and so on. So whenever you smell something, you know that the smelling consciousness arises. And this smelling consciousness arises because there is the nose and there is the smell. And also along with these three there arises the contact, which is the vivid experience of the smell. So here also, just by paying attention to what you smelled, you come to see that these phenomena just arise and disappear depending upon their respective conditions. When you taste something also, you know that tasting consciousness arises because there is a tongue, or tongue sensitivity, and there is a taste. And along with these three, there arises the vivid experience of the taste, which is phassa. And you also know that the tasting consciousness arises, and also phassa arises depending on these conditions, and so they are not created by anybody, and they arise and disappear as they wish, and so there is no controlling over their arising and disappearing. So these things you see when you pay close attention to what's going on at the moment. And the tangible objects. Now, tangible objects are more wider in range than other objects, because touch, the body sensitivity is everywhere in our body. So it is not at the tip of the nails, and it may not be at the tip of the hairs, but in all other places, the moist places, there is body sensitivity. So we can feel this, the tangible or touch sensation anywhere in our bodies. So when we are sitting, our bodies are touching the cushion, our legs are touching, our hands are touching, our lips, eyelids are touching, and so on. So we can see sensation of touch almost anywhere in our body. And when we are mindful of this touching, we see that there is touching, or this touching sensation, because there is the body sensitivity, and there is what is called touch, what is called tangible object. And tangible object means that the earth element, fire element, and wind element together, these three together are called tangible object. So because there is a tangible object, there is the touch sensation or touching consciousness, And along with these three, there arises the vivid experience of touch, which is phassa. And so you know that phassa arises depending on the three coming together, and so it is not created by anybody and so on. Okay, when you see something and you have the vivid experience of that something, and there is contact or phassa, and that phassa is conditioned by how many bases? In that particular case, you see something, right? And there is seeing consciousness, and there is phassa. So phassa is conditioned by how many bases? Eye base,
the mind,
visible object base, and then mind base, right? Because when consciousness and mental states, mental factors arise together, they are said to support each other. So mind is consciousness is not good today. Consciousness is the condition for mental factors, and mental factors are conditioned for consciousness. So they support each other. So when phassa arises, following the coming together of the three, then phassa is conditioned by how many? Three bases, right? Eye base, and then visible object base, and mind base. The same with hearing consciousness. So phassa concomitant with hearing consciousness is conditioned by what basis? Ear base, sound base, consciousness. Consciousness is mind base, right? And smelling phassa conditioned by nose base, smell base, mind base, right? And tasting phassa, tongue base, the taste base, mind base, right? And then touching, body base, tangible object base, mind base. So you now see that one phassa, which is concomitant with seeing consciousness and so on, is conditioned by three bases. Now, after seeing consciousness, there is receiving consciousness. Receiving consciousness is mind-based, and together with receiving consciousness, again, phassa, vedana, and other mental factors arise. And this receiving consciousness depends on what base? Heart base. Hadeya Vatu means heart base. So it depends not on eye base, but on heart base. So in that case, phassa concomitant with receiving consciousness is conditioned by what basis? The same with the objects, rupa, visible object base, and mind base, and heart base. So three bases: visible object base, mind base, and heart base. The same with the next, santirana, investigating consciousness. So with that consciousness arise phassa, vedana, and other mental states, and it also depends on Hadaya Vatu, heart base. So here, Phassa concomitant with Santirana, investigating consciousness, is conditioned by Rupa base, visible object base, mind base, and heart base. So after Santirana, there is Vattabhana and Javana. These two are not taken here because they are not resultant consciousness. Wow. Have this chart with you today. Vijnana, Nama Rupa, Salajatana, Phassa, Vedana. They belong to Vipaka, round of Vipaka. So they are the results, the present results of the past karma. And also they are the present cause of future results. So since they are to be taken as results here, the other consciousness, other types of consciousness are not taken here. So we leave out the Vattabhana and Javana here. First one, the Dharamana, that's aftertaste. The same thing. So the Phassa concomitant with the Dharamana, the aftertaste, is conditioned by visible object base, mind base, and heart base. So in this link, Phassa means Phassa concomitant with resultant consciousness, and bases means, as I said before, 12 bases, 6 internal and 6 external bases. Okay, can you see this link during the practice? You don't? You do. You hear a noise, and then you know that because there is a noise you hear, that means you are seeing this link between the sound and the phassa here. So you can see for yourself, especially during meditation, the conditionality of this link. Say 6 internal bases and 6 external bases to contact or phassa. This chart does not cover all. It is for 5 senses only. So please strike out the word Dhamma. It's not needed here. We can also understand the Dhamma objects and mind base, but not on this chart, because it is for 5 senses. You think of something in the past, and then say you see some things in the past now, experiencing it vividly, and so there is phassa. And there is the mental object. You are not seeing the object which is present, but you are actually remembering the object of the past that comes to your mind. So in that case, your phassa is conditioned by what? Mind base, and then the mental object is called Dhamma base. So it is conditioned by Dhamma base and mind base. Now here, mind base can be, the bhavanga is also called mind base, because when active consciousness arises, it arises as though it comes out of the bhavanga. Now there is bhavanga flowing flowing for a long time, and then there is an interruption of the bhavanga. Because if there is no bhavanga at all, then no conscious moments can arise. So when conscious moments arise, it is said to be conditioned by this bhavanga. And this bhavanga is what is called mind base. There is also some kind of, we call it adverting, some kind of thinking before the real thinking arises. Sometimes you want to think of something and there is thinking. So that adverting is also called mind base. From that the kind of thinking arises the real thinking. So that adverting is also called mind base. So we cannot see bhavanga, or it is very difficult to see bhavanga. We can see that adverting mind preceding our thoughts. Sometimes we want to think of something and then we think of it. So there is something like that in introducing thinking preceding the real thinking. So during meditation we have such thoughts very often, and so you can see that the phassa arising with the real thinking is conditioned by that mind base that is adverting. So this is the link between 6 external bases, 6 internal bases, and contact or phassa. Okay. Though this link can be seen in practice, when you practice, do not deliberately try to see these links. If you do, you will become agitated, and it's kind of distraction. But the realization must come by itself. Just by paying attention, and some things will be revealed to you, and so it should be like that. Not you deliberately trying to see this or that and that. So that is excessive effort, and so it causes agitation. Okay, once again, let us read the formula.
Avijja paccaya sankhara, sankhara paccaya vijnanam, vijnanam 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 vijnanam